Boop, boop, boop. Brr, brr. Oh, welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. Getting started a little late and a little too early. I apologize for that. We had a little technical difficulty, but that's what happens when you mess with high technology. Yes, today is the last day of the BIPOC tabletop review on this channel. We are going to talk about it being Friday. We got to talk about Future Friday. Yes, we are going to discuss a number. I had to put them all together. I know they deserve their own reviews, but I wanted to talk about get started a little bit earlier with science fiction games that are specifically transhuman and posthuman. I think among a number of niche games, meaning tabletop role playing games that are science fiction, transhumanism and post-human role-playing games, they themselves are niche, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for really moving the tabletop RPG experience. And unfortunately, many of these are darlings of the game that have deserve a lot of our attention. And if you are someone who wants to really get into science fiction, you want it to also delve into the larger ideals of what it means to have technology upturn everything that we know in society today itself, from economics to social structures and politics and um, uh, gender and biology and what it means to have identity and things. Yeah, these are the games. So, and this is a small spattering of a large number of games, but I just wanted to highlight some of my favorite choices. So here we have five games. We have Transhuman Space for Steve Jackson Games for GURPS. We have Altered Carbon, the role playing game, of course, based upon books, which then became a two-season Netflix series. We have The Expanse role playing game. Yes, The Expanse, a five-season television show currently streamable on Amazon here in the States. It was on Sci-Fi Channel for a short amount of time before Amazon purchased it. And then we have Eclipse Phase First Edition and the Second Edition version of the same game. And I'm going to very quickly go over them. We're going to do a page through for Altered Carbon and Eclipse Phase. And as I do an overview of why I think these games are deserve your attention, but really another reason is, excuse me, why these games haven't gotten the love and devotion that they deserve from the tabletop um, role playing game community. So let me move some of these over. I will show you some. There are plenty of uh, I'll say auxiliary in books and information and such. So for here, Eclipse Phase. Um, there are links in the down below in the video. Please go over to Posthuman Studios. This was originally printed under Catalyst Games. There was a split. Now they are Posthuman Studios. The first edition digital content is completely free and they support creators. They do have a Creative Commons non-commercial license. So if you want to produce things but not make money off of it, they absolutely want you to produce material for them. Along with along with Eclipse Phase, there are additional books that round out the solar system. One of the things that you'll find in a big thing in science fiction, transhumanism, post-human role-playing games is the idea of confining in, inter planetary travel and development within our own solar system. So Mercury, Venus, all the habitats that can be in space around them. Of course, Earth and the Moon, Saturn, Jupiter are the playgrounds of a lot of these games. Not necessarily leaving our solar system with faster than light travel and things of that nature. These are three books that are included in the first edition. Sunward and the Inner System, dealing with Mercury and Venus and the societies that live in and around them, especially in the cloud cities of Venus and Mercury, which spins very slowly away from the sun, so that one side of the planet is freezing and the other side is blasted by the sun's rays. And Panopticon, Rimward, the Outer System, and such. Wayne B says may be good. You say mostly ignored. Experience tells us that generally things based off other media are more focused on novelty sales than producing great product. Maybe partially why. I tend to agree with you that, like, for example, Altered Carbon, the television show, I believe it got a lot of attention then. But let me make my case as to why I believe these games tend to burn bright and disappear. All right, so I would say that. Ooh, let me get the other game here. Oops, GURPS. I'm gonna pull out GURPS and its version here as well. Um, GURPS Transhuman Space, and then Transhuman Space Fifth Wave is another set of books here for, powered by the GURPS games setting. There's a love, if you know GURPS, there's a love hate relationship with GURPS, because there's a book for everything, and their books, even though they aren't the thickest things in the world, man, they have a lot of information packed in them. But then you got to love the GURPS system, which is just a 3D6 system. Yeah, Dead Man says Venus is nearly tidally locked, so it has one side that is almost always toward the sun, which basically does one of those weird things where um, unlike Mercury, which doesn't have a an atmosphere, it I'm going to use the word instantly, but maybe that's not a good scientific description. It goes from blazing hot to freezing cold, whereas like Venus gets blasted by the sun, and with having that thick atmosphere, it's pretty brutal. It like melts lead pretty easily and such. Okay, so um, one of the reasons why I think it doesn't get a lot of attention is because um, the rules themselves, not the rules, the setting themselves is very difficult to explain to player characters, to players that you want and for them to make characters. And what I mean by that is it's great to, there's so much to talk about in these settings. It's beautiful settings, but the problem is, how do you play in it? Yeah, it's I'm going to call you O five Mots. I'm going to call you O five. So O five says, "Ooh, Eclipse Phase, way underrated. People should check it out." Absolutely. And John Wright says, "I love the post-apocalyptic cyberpunk world of Alita Battle Angel. I wish they do a TTRPG based on it. I really like their take on cyborg android character builds. Ooh, that would be kind of an interesting thing." I, One problem in with science fiction in general in our tabletop role playing game community is the fact that a number of people who can play games and run games don't like high technology, because it's difficult for them to keep up with remembering what cell phones do, remembering what different types of technology do. And I hear that people have a difficulty with just science fiction in general. These are Eclipse Phase morph recognition cards, and these cards have a morph on one side, an image of what that morph looks like, essentially a body that you can sleeve into, and then the gaming statistics on the other side. And in these games, in these transhuman games, one of the major aspects is something called a cortical stack, or basically the ability to run around in the world with a backup brain. There's like some kind of stacked carbon thing, thumb drive, as it were, chip or something, usually in the back of the head, and it records your brain waves continuously. And if your character is physically destroyed, there is a way for someone, if someone can recover your cortical stack, then it can be uploaded, and you can become a digital life form, and then you can just be downloaded into a physical body. And sometimes they are mechanical bodies, like this one, a case morph, as is described in eclipse phase, or you might be inside of a biological body like this uplifted animal, a owl-like thing. And excuse me. And of course, there's many of them have physical properties that make them more adaptable into a specific environment. Some are more social, making you like smarter, faster, stronger, beautiful, that kind of thing. Mm, mm, mm. Atlantean Mariner says GURPS setting books are awesome material. My brother and I used transhuman space and their material there in their martial arts book to make some awesome action sessions. Martial arts with six armed bodies. Yeah, that's awesome. Wade's like, that's an owl bear. Don't you dare. Don't you do it. An owl bear in zero G. Yep. Oh 05 says, I think Chick charnies are technically pods. Yeah, there is a I want it to be very general. So that's one of the issues is like when you make up a player character in these games, most of the time we imagine them physically, right? Like what do they look like? How tall are they? And and in these games, your body is just another it's just another piece of equipment. And so unfortunately, having uh, creating an identity for a character can be a little bit difficult, especially trying to explain them to player character. I mean, to your players. Second of all, the rule sets can be difficult to embrace, along with a setting that's also difficult to embrace. And so, I think one of the things holding back transhuman science fiction role playing is that the rules themselves are already complicated enough. Okay, so my physical stats are completely separate than my mental stats, and my physical stats can change based on if I'm in this splicer morph versus this steel morph versus this sundiver morph. Like what? And then you have to explain. Okay, everything that you think you know about modern day is going to be different. As a matter of fact, in GURPS Transhuman, it's basically 100 years in the future, and it it goes into explaining that everything, and this is part of the part of why I love transhuman science fiction, is that all the BS that we argue about today becomes nearly irrelevant in the future. And every We argue about gender politics and gender roles today. We argue about um, racial dynamics and cultural appropriation and heck, even economic disparity and lifespan and access to proper food and housing and all that stuff. Now that doesn't mean it's any better in the future. It's just a whole different set of circumstances. But yeah, I love it so much. When you can take your thumb drive in the back of your head and stick it into another life form or artificial form and become something else and live in someone else's shoes, it changes the way you think about things, and it creates its own problem because how easy would it be for you to quote unquote appropriate someone else's journey that they were born in when you could just pay for it and just be re-sleeved into something else. Oh 05 says the Morph Recognition Guide has a comment saying something about owlbear being a cosmetic option for them. I think I don't remember that, but I wouldn't doubt it. Of course, they're fans of role playing games too. Wayne says the more you talk, the more interesting it sounds. I barely played Traveler way back once or twice. Yeah, it's this is science fiction aside. It really is. Uh, oh 05 Mod says none of our BS matters anymore. People had to come up with new BS to be mad about. Listen, as long as we're air quotes human, we're going to have things to bitch about. Let's be honest. Our lifestyle today, even in the worst places in the world, is better than it was 100 years ago, and then 100 years ago before that. And we still come up with reasons to separate ourselves and become tribal and all that. All that stuff is going to stay. But the science fiction of it, yeah, I love the fact that Oh yeah, remember all that stuff you guys used to argue about? Yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. Yep, silly arguments given to us that make little sense, and we do, and that's one of my reasons why I love this this game and this setting so much. So, okay, very quickly, if I can describe some of the differences between these, Eclipse Phase is a percentile based system. This is the second edition, and it's simplified and cleaned up some of the issues from the first edition. The first edition is great, but it gave such a sandbox, especially during character creation, which was basically essentially a point buy system, that it was overwhelming for brand new players to even begin playing it. So not only did your game master have to understand the game, but then had to explain it to the players, and it was very difficult because you had every option available, and human beings tend to be binary. We love yes, no, love hate choices, as opposed to walking into a supermarket and having every choice available and no way to know the difference between one choice or another. So the other thing about Eclipse Phase is that it has a large number of skills, and some games ride a fine line when it comes to skill choice and access, and whether you are paying and buying skills and the cost of buying those skills is going to pay off in the end. So I think those two kind of held it back. Again, percentile system, strangely enough, it's a roll it's a roll high, roll low system. So you want to roll higher, you have a skill and you want to roll higher than your challenge, but you do not want to roll over your skill. So let's say you have a I have to make up something. You have a zero G maneuver ability and it's 60%. Well, you don't want to roll above 60%, but if you are going head to head with maybe another enemy and both of you are trying to get to the airlock and their zero G is 43%, you want to the one with 43% definitely wants to roll higher than you in the challenge, but you don't want to bust and you don't want to go over. And then it has a very strange system called Moxie where you spend points and you can when you roll 2d10 to get your percentages, you can flip those percentages numbers. So if you roll at 83, you can make it a 38. Basically, that's it. Um, when he says we're not a species that keeps long-term or even short-term perspectives generally. Yeah, we are definitely frogs in a boiling pot of water. We tend to um, we react actually quite intelligently when we are first burned, like putting your hand in a pot of boiling water, or someone tries to catch you on fire. But slow burns, we get very comfortable in slow burns, which is why so many of us live in regions around the world that are absolutely positively harmful to our continued existence, and we stay there anyway, whether it's ecological or criminal or anything like that. It's like why people live in floodplains and earthquake regions and in near volcanoes and things like that, storm wrecked areas, things like that. Yep. Uh, O5 says, first edition Eclipse Phase is extremely simulationist and crunchy, like Shadowrun Plus percentile. Ooh, that's a burn. Second edition moved way more toward the narrative side. Yes, second edition decided to do away with un- one of the issues with changing your body from one morph to another is that you get bonuses and penalties based on your physical form, which meant that it would adjust your stats. So every time you rolled, you sorry, every time you re-sleeved, your stats and skills would go up and down. And that's kind of like AD&D's life drain. When you get touched by a creature with life drain, it's like, oh, you lose 2 levels. Now rewrite your character, and it's just like, oh, you start to roll your eyes, right? Um, yeah, Ozma says high rolls win as long as they're within your ability is how I think of it. Yep. Yep, yep. It actually makes a lot of sense too. Atlantean Mariner says transhuman space and eclipse phase freak some players out because they can't work out the gender and sexual fluidity. Yes. Murder hoboing is also pointless with stacks and printing items. That's another fun thing in this setting. So, um, for example, hoarding is not a thing in eclipse phase and transhuman. So, you know, listen, we all love gun porn, right? Maybe I shouldn't call it that because YouTube will ding me. Um, so let me call it prawn. Okay, so we know players love to go shopping, right? Big guns, armor piercing, smart rounds, all that kind of stuff. When you have 3D printing, people don't hoard things. When you can travel from Luna, the moon, to Saturn in basically, I'm going to call it the blink of an eye at the speed of electronic data, you can't take things with you. So when you arrive on in a hab around Saturn, you arrive naked. So what do? Well, maybe you need equipment, but you have to get that equipment printed out, which means that when players are going through various types of missions, they don't have their things with them, which makes another complication. So okay, so now a player character, your player character is going, okay, I don't know what I'm going to look like. My gender and sexuality doesn't matter when you're digital life. Gender and sexuality doesn't matter. So when I download into another body, whether I wake up in male, female, something in between, something that can actually change and move through gender, which of course all of that doesn't, game wise, none of that matters anyway, right? Your gender doesn't really matter. It's just are you in a morph, juiced up with um genetic and adrenal modifications? Are you in a synthetic morph that's a machine? All that kind of stuff. That's the important part. Then when you get arrived to your mission, now you've got to run around and figure out, how do I get some guns and explosives and stuff? Can I print that out? Will the machines let me print it out? Will the authorities stop me if I try to start printing these things out? Will those printing machines put something in any item that I print that will track me or something? Those are the fun parts. So yes. Also, um, there's something I'm let me get back into the chat, but there's something else that's pretty important in these games, that is something that disrupts the tabletop RPG experience, that I think makes these games better, but it's something that you really have to wrap your head around. So O5 Mott says Eclipse Phase has so much stuff in the books for the fact that in most, not necessarily all, campaigns, you're just going to ditch everything, even the body you're using, exactly, when you move on in the plot. Exactly. And I hate to say this, but I have some Eclipse Phase videos out there. I might have to update them. One of the best things about these games, game masters, and I'm going to say this as a person who loves gaming and think this is a terrible thing, in these games, kill your players. One of the most important things you got to get right the first time. Do it as soon as possible. Murder your players. Why? Because death in many ways is off the table in these games. And you may wonder, well, how do you have a lethal game that's dangerous and you can't die? The reason why you, and I air quotes, can't die, that's actually not true. You could be irretrievable, is the fact that literally you can go on a mission, a suicide mission, and blow your own brains out. But as long as you can get either beam your neural matrix outside, you can be reconstituted from a prior download of yourself, maybe 3 weeks before you went on a mission, and you wake up and you realize, wow, I must have gone on a mission and died 3 weeks ago. I wonder what happened. Also, someone can retrieve your cortical stack and then put it in their pocket, and maybe a couple of months or even years later. As a matter of fact, one of the plots in Altered Carbon is that our main character wakes up like 250 years later from cold storage and is put into a new body. Yep. There you go. Wayne Brock's like, can't die, just like D&D. Five easy, yeah. Five easy model. Yeah. The thing is that this game doesn't listen, fifth edition, we know it's easy mode. No one wants to admit it, right? Because they put so many things in the way of your character dying. Instead of going to 0 hit points and you're dead, oh, there's death rolls. Oh, you can be you can stop bleeding if you get assistance. You can pop back up with some healing. This game, no, 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 no. You get your arms and legs blown off pretty easily. But that's the good thing, though, because then, as a game master, you can put your players in so many lethal situations. As a matter of fact, these games suggest that suiciding is an actual tactic. You may have to retrieve some bit of information or something, or maybe your character literally has to get basilisk hacked, meaning like you watch some code. Just once you watch that code, it gets imprinted onto your neural pathways, gets downloaded into your cortical stack. Somebody has to retrieve your cortical stack, or maybe you get infected by something, and you're like, "All right, guys, everybody, step back," and then you destroy yourself, or you vent yourself out into space, or pull the pin on that incendiary grenade and hold it to your chest tightly. Um, yeah, neutrino forecasting. Yep, all that kind of stuff. Uh, it's great. And as here's another thing that's complicated. Your memories may not be your own. Um, the reinstitution of your memories compared to the I think this is a piece of artwork, or is this city? Yeah, Bay City. The reinstitution of your mind and your body is something that is very difficult for characters to accept, right? It's the idea that maybe your memories aren't your own. Maybe you thought you are the real you, but you're just a copy, and the real you is trying to hunt you down. Maybe you had maybe the 35 years that you lived on this earth only happened in the last 12 hours because someone artificially threw together a couple of different memories and created you in a lab or something. Uh, what's the movie, the Arnold Schwarzenegger and Colin Farrell movie? Mars Agent, Sleeper Agent. Wow, why can't I? What, you guys know what I'm talking about? Um, Mott says everything from quote, have someone bring your head or stack back, yep, to tricks like, haha, neutrino farcaster, head explodes, to the really scary, you wake up in the backup facility. It's 2 months later. And well, how cool. Total Recall. Thank you guys. J Dub, Atlantean M. Yeah, thank you so much. Total Recall. I mean, but how do you play a game when a player character comes up and says, I've got this great backstory, I've got loved ones, I was on these deep missions, blah, blah, blah. And then you tell them, hey, guess what? It was all fake. As a matter of fact, you yourself are the big bad. You just don't remember it. Those are the kind of stories you can tell with these games, and it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Now I'm going to pull out one more just because um, it uses a different system. Oh, shoot, 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 shoot. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Altered Carbon. I don't give this a 10 in terms of its system. It's like a 6.5, 7 to me. I think it's a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, but it is a little bit unique in the gaming TTRPG system. So this one is a dice step system roll low. Adding those two together, ooh, the sixth day. Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Um, yeah. O5 says, oh, Eclipse Phase is very Delta Green Call of Cthulhu like investigation game, by the way. So there's a lot of this is horrible. See how well you handle it. Yep. Yeah, 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 yeah. Very, very Cthulhu body horror, psychological horror as well. When you don't know if you can trust yourself, even let alone your allies. I think there's a little. I think also because of how Eclipse Phase is set, it is like you said, very Delta Green. So there is a little bit of run and gun, but there's also social things and trying to away those two. Dead Man's Life talks about the sixth day is a great one about cloning and mind replicating and things like that. And Mott says remembering that dying is extremely stressful. Not remembering what happened is also stressful. Yeah. Ask anybody who likes to drink themselves into a stupor and then forgetting the past couple of hours, let alone days, weeks, or months, right? and also knowing that somebody's running around with your face who actually might be you. Um, Altered Carbon, you guys distracted me. Altered Carbon uses step dice, roll low. So a D4 is the best die to roll, and a D12 is the worst. And you want to get a one. I look at it as the singularity system, where you want to roll a one, you want to roll low. And you, of course, in a contested roll, a d6 is better in a contested roll than against a d8 or d10 because you have a greater chance of rolling low, and you can't roll higher than a 6 on a d6, but you can roll 7, 8, 9, or 10 on a d10. Also, I think one of the issues is that it does use a little bit of a dice pooling system, similar to how second edition Eclipse Phase has done it, to make transitioning from one morph to another a little bit easier. Altered Carbon has it. Altered Carbon, because of the television show, has included things like DHF's Digital Human Freight is an idea. In Altered Carbon, you actually see cortical stacks getting destroyed a lot more than you would see in, say, Eclipse Phase, which pretty much it it kind of devolves into DM fiat, meaning like if someone takes a bullet to the back of the head, is your cortical sac destroyed? And Eclipse Phase really frowns upon that. And of course, you want player characters to keep living, and it is kind of cool for player characters to run around with your friends and family's heads strapped to your to your belt because you didn't have, you're using a vibro blade to try to cut their head off because you don't have time to surgically remove their stack or something like that. Yeah. Mod says, What happened? Why am I in a new body?" "Oh, you went on a mission and didn't come back." "So I died?" "We don't know what happened to that version of you. You're going to have to go on the mission and find out for you to just die and have it all happen all over again." These people are funny. Oh, hey, thanks, Mots. So in the Expanse, Mots describes what a cortical stack is in Eclipse Phase. Um, in the Expanse uses the age system, the AGE system from Green Ronin, and the Adventure Game Engine uses 3d6, or rather, it uses 2d6 plus 1d6. And when you get doubles, the 1d6 usually is a different color, and if you get a double with rolling either the other 2d6, you get stunt points. And stunt points allow you to do extraordinary things, moving, acting, and reacting in physical confrontations, as well as like getting points for social interactions and psychological things and investigations and such. The Expanse, of course, is based on a television show, currently on Amazon here in the States, and maybe no, I think they probably don't have a contract with Sci-Fi Channel any longer. But this one essentially is Earth, very generalized. Earth, which is overpopulated and an urban cesspool, versus the Belters who live out in the asteroid belt, Ceres and Tycho and Eros stations, and the outer uh, asteroid belt, and Mars, which belters are like the working class. They are the ones that are used giving resources to everyone else and treat it like uh, labor. And then we have Mars, and Mars is basically Earth 2.0. They're very militarized. They want to terraform. The dream is to turn Mars into a second Earth, a place with a new utopia, but their militarization makes them very fascist, and so you have this generally three arc uh, uh, faction system, and of course there's conflict in between all of this, and then you have like within the belt you have like terrorists and how far do you want to go for your freedom, but you are stuck in space. Many belters are adapted to light and zero gravity, so they can't live on heavy gravity worlds like Earth, but they want to turn the places that they live in space into Earth-like system. Very very family oriented. They have these non-genetically related families that they consider themselves part of. Very actually something that comes up in the books, and in this talks about like they're very polyamorous and such, and children are raised in groups. As a matter of fact, one of the main characters in the Expanse had like 8 parents, genetically came from 8 different parents, because of where he lived in Montana or someplace like that. But anyway, the Expanse uses the age system. This one is less. This is definitely does not have the physical and mental um, manipulation that the other games do. You're very human or humanocentric in this setting, but this one is far more politically, has a lot more political intrigue in it. So yeah, yeah. The main character in the Expanse, Holden, came from a conclave on Earth where he was the genetic byproduct of 8 parents. I mean, he had a primary mom, but it was other things like that. And these games really throw a lot of that stuff, a lot of your imagination out, aspects of what we consider today, out the door. So, yep. Let's share this to the group. So we're gonna let's page through. Let's go through Altered Carbon while we talk about this. John Rice says, I could see a scenario where clones are grown to have spare bodies for the elite. Oh, hell's yes, to download their sentience into. But then the clones fight back and rebel as they don't want their minds wiped clean. Absolutely. Um, and let's not forget. I mean, maybe there are air quotes terrorists that want to free the clones, who feel that clones need to have their own human rights. Maybe a clone is released into the world of someone, one of these elites or whatever, and they're trying to hire people to basically murder that clone to ensure that no one finds out about the clones that they're being used to cut up into maybe spare parts or whatever. Or maybe that's why the elite who have access to multiple bodies, uh, immortality isn't always good for everybody else. It's great for you, but when you are a CEO or a politician or someone who controls society, and there's a good chance you won't die, what happens to everybody else? There's no opportunities for all the young people that come up behind you. And so that may be a thing as well. Also, let's be honest. Come on, everything revolt devolves down into devianism. I think there's some narcissists out there that would love to make love to themselves by force or choice, right? Oh man. Uh, environmental group created someone who was. Sorry, reading your Mots today seems to be our co-host. I love it. Environmental group created someone who was all their son, so he could inherit all their shares in some land they wanted to protect or something. Yes, yes, that's right. Because they were the Earth government was swallowing up land. Uh, Today we have laws where private land can be excised by the government, used for like farming and population expansion and things like that. And they were fighting against the encroachment of uh, basically a domineering encroachment of a domineering um, society of government. And so that's why he was there. But he left home. Mom told him to get the hell out, and he left home. And I think that was James Holden. Yet running away from that destiny gave him the hero complex that drives the plot. There's a plot from a video game I always thought could work well in something like Eclipse Phase, but mentioning what game is from would be a massive spoiler. Deadman says the greatest fear in Eclipse Phase would be the Flesh Party, a Titan nanovirus that debones the victims and makes them a psychic mass of flesh that is basically a carpet covering everything in a room or rooms. Ugh, yeah, there's a lot of body horror there in Eclipse Phase. There's a lot of body horror. You don't want like I was talking about the basilisk hack, which is essentially your brain, because it's digital information, can get hacked by just seeing code that gets imprinted into your brain, which is just information, right? Whatever we experience, whatever we see in our senses is information, and that information can then hack you. And now, on a larger scale, your brain being hacked and you're under mind control and everyone can see it, yeah, that's pretty easy to discover. But when you are subtly pieces of your brain are disappearing, maybe your memories are being overridden. For example, maybe you're forgetting someone that is very important that was supposed to be in your life, or maybe you're forgetting one of your most cherished memories and you end up forgetting that or something. You could even forget a mission. So yeah, this is altered carbon. As you can see, there are skills, and you can see there are die rolls next to the skills, and they're kind of describing character creation and such. They use a lot of symbols, and I'm not me and my bad eyesight as a man of a certain age, I can't really get past it too much. Um, so I'm dubious about using too many symbols that are, these little hex symbols that have things in them that are, for me, um, the symbol on the left side of the screen looks very similar to this symbol on the right side, which is similar to the bottom right of the screen, right? Like I don't see instantly, I don't see very much difference, and so that was a drawback for me for the game. I thought maybe that's just fonting is a possibility too because it uses pretty small font. See some of these characters that were in the television show. There's Kovacs. Let's see. Wayne says, never had an interest in tech-based gaming until this little chat. Always fantasy. Now I'm interested. People, you may have ruined me. Uh the hook. These terrible things happening to you have been engineered as a reality show. You're not even a real person. Yep. You're an actor whose memories or personality were overwritten to create you. Oh, hilarious. I uh, I remember playing in GURPS Transhuman, and we had a player who was playing a reality star. And the whole time, everyone's just like, "Why are there people following us and stuff?" And it was just like there was a crew. Of course, he was recording himself 24/7. He had his own recorder in his eye. He had people following him to record him, and he kept playing it off like, "Oh, they're people from my shadowy past," but they were like a news crew, like a recording crew. And the PCs found out about it, and they were like, "You son of a!" And they found out how much money he was getting from it, and they were like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Black Ops publicly uh, broadcast, kind of weird but fun. Eclipse Phase has a lot of horrible, tight psychological self-adapting weapons, and when you combine all those things, I'm almost done paging through this, but when you combine all of those elements together, and that's just the world, and we're not even talking about the rules. I think it can be a little daunting, but on the other hand, having space to say to your players, like, listen, it's not just you shooting things. It might be because your memories aren't your own. What a One of the beginning adventures that I always used for Eclipse Phase was one where all the players wake up and they have to investigate who killed them, and then you realize at the end of it, because there's one called Ego Hunter. There's an adventure called Ego Hunter, and I just kind of ripped Ego Hunter apart and broke it up into my own thing, where the big bad is essentially has all the player characters are actually the same personality broken up into different experiences, and the main character is all of the PCs who has all the PC skills and abilities as one person, and was going around sending agents out to destroy um escaped versions of his own personality that were running around and having their own experiences and things like that. So anyway, that is altered carbon. Let's go over to Oh, it did go over. Okay, good. Let's go over the eclipse phase while we page through this. I mean, we page through this while we talk. Um, Lastly, yeah, we talked about the hoarding, political systems, and new economies. Here's another thing as well. While cyberpunk is extremely hyper capitalist, right? The rich are always rich, the poor are always poor, and that's true in to an extent in eclipse phase. But there's also um, what am I trying? Post scarcity. So, in other words, in a post scarce world, how do you how do you navigate a post-scarce world? Meaning a world that doesn't need to have money because there's enough available for every human being, living person or mechanical person in your world. Where does the where does loss come from? And it comes from essentially a reputation economy. And so reputation is extremely important in these kind of worlds. For example, our social media and our various social media platforms are reputation economies. They are individuals, content creators, people that post things, people that look good or travel or give advice, or hell, in our own gaming community. And the reputation becomes the value in other people. And so, as characters, what happens is it's not the money that you earn, but you must maintain your reputation within a group so that you can earn certain things in that group. An example would be, let's say you are from an anarchist group, and that anarchist group needs ice water from comets or something. And so the player characters may need to maintain their reputation by, say, putting a beacon on a chunk of ice so that a group could retrieve that ice for water for their isolated habitat or something like that. And players need to keep track of their reputation. And what ends up happening a lot of times is players will love to burn their reputation, but they're not really good at maintaining good relationships with other people. Um, Oh yeah, Dead Man says sounds like the yeah, Eclipse Phase adventure Ego Hunter. Yep, 4 to 6 players, all playing as copies of the same character, trying to get together with their primary ego. Spoiler: he died. Yeah, in mine it was the big bad, and it was a way to get people to roll dice and things like that, and find out that you're not as independent as you think you are. Also, I remember playing in a beginning adventure where we all woke up, and we woke up weeks later because all of us had died on a mission, and we had to go on a mission to find out why we died. We all travel on the mission, and during the mission we end up going into a derelict spaceship, seeing our dead bodies, turn around, and we get murdered. And just before we get murdered, we send out a distress call which contacts us, doesn't get to us, and then weeks later we are sent on a mission to discover why we died. It was a big circle. Yeah, it was definitely a big circle. Mod says I was more thinking about as a one-shot intro campaign based on, I think it was called Real Fiction, when the game finally got around to introducing it, excusing a tutorialish setting and party. Hmm. I think there's a lot that can be done to come up with like beginning intro games. Um, Especially the idea, the fact that like explaining to players that their morph might change. As you see, I'm paging through. This is Eclipse Phase Second Edition, and it shows the different types of morphs and uplifted animals and things like that. Uh, along with eliminating gender and having gender and sexuality fluidity, um, having relationships with animals is a whole other bestiality thing that you might want to get into. But what's kind of cool is being like synthetic bodies. Like you can be a swarm of microbots or nanobots or something, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, pretty awesome. I'm going to be a arachnoid morph or a slitheroid. Infomorphs, you can just play digital individuals. Um, but I think there's a plenty of stories that you can tell, such as maybe there's a someone important is in a digital, like a cortical stack. They're just in a digital backup somewhere, and the player characters need to retrieve them. How do you find that individual? Um, there's also there's an exploit in the game that you might have to be aware of, because the first time players think of it, they're gonna try to do it immediately, and that is making copies of themselves, downloading them into similar bodies, and then running around like a handful of mentally linked, all similar personality special forces people with like gyrojet rifles and incendiary grenades blasting away at your setting, right? And for the most part, both in Eclipse Phase and Altered Carbon and etc., being more than one person for extended periods of times is pretty much considered socially unacceptable and illegal in in many cases, unless you're really on the outskirts of the solar system. So yeah, don't let your players do that too. But that's the first thing they're going to think of. They're going to like, oh, can I copy myself and be myself and run around with myself? When strangely enough, most people that are narcissistic enough to copy themselves to be their own best friend tend to deviate. Their personalities tend to deviate, and they might not want to go along with the plan that you came up with because they already know what the plan you came up with, and they're going, "Wait a minute, why would you make a copy of me to use as cannon fodder? Why would I?" Forgetting that they are a copy of themselves. It's strange to make it sound that way, but yeah. Yeah. So, oh no, the old I am Legion trick. Yeah. I had the same player try to do the same thing in Vampire, uh, the Masquerade, and it was like, really, dude. I'm gonna embrace special forces people and make them loyal to me. They're gonna be my personal bodyguards. And I was like, yeah, that 80-year-old special forces person is pretty highly skilled now and a powerful vampire. Like beat your ass. Ozma says, I'm sorry, says, see, swarmoids sound like fun, and they can be, but you really rely on your party to physically move objects when you're made of robotic bugs. Yep, absolutely. Um, Also, there is a chance of body dysmorphia, so every player character can't just download themselves into any bodily shape. Some are You can suffer psychological harm by going from, say, a I don't know, a natural born human being into a insectoid body or something like that. So science, again, I think a lot of love when people realize what these settings are about taking technology today. Most technological intellectual properties we have today, like Star Trek, Star Wars, and all that, presents to us a what if. And those what ifs are usually very singular. Like, what if we had human looking androids? What if we had time travel? What if had we could download our bodies? What if we were connected on we were always connected on the internet all the time in our heads? What transhuman and posthuman games do is say, imagine a world where all the technologies moved forward, all of them, and like right here talks about transhuman sexuality and talks about virtual life, real sex work, new experiences. I mean, these are pretty adult things. Polyamory, synthmorphs, gender dysmorphia, um all that kind of stuff, children and reproduction. Ooh, it gets into some nasty things like that. Like it also challenges us to rethink what we think of when it comes to punishment and work in the future and such. For example, um, I there do not get me wrong. There is no reason whatsoever to think that, oh, I don't know, pedophiles today should be treated nicely, right? But would you think it would be a humane thing to insert them into a an artificial reality so that they don't hurt anybody else, for them to explore their own desires? Right? That is a moral question that happens in these kind of settings. Also, if you can live forever, how long do you hold on to a grudge? Like, mortality in many ways, it is the factor in which we judge our lives. How long do we hold a grudge? How long do we love and not be loved? How much time do we have to do a thing? And but when you're immortal, when you can delete your memories, or add new memories, or delete others people's memories, or dull them out, what is harm to someone else, or psychological harm versus biological harm and such. One human being attacks another human being. Is it okay for you to delete the memory or the the psychological urge in one other person to harm another. And what about the person harmed? If it's easy enough to delete the or edit away the harm that was done to them, does that mean the criminal should be less punished because it's easier to fix the harm? I know that doesn't make much sense, but I think I tried to. Um, O5 says, I think Eclipse Phase typically punishes abuse of fork mechanics with the sanity mechanics. Yes, letting copies die or being mentally, shift a little bit, or being mentally reintegrated with a bunch of them after a bunch of time passes is bad for the mind. So what Mott's is talking about is that you can fork your brain, essentially making copies, send them out into the world to do things. When you reintegrate them, reinstance them back into the primary personality, you have multiple memories competing over each other over the same time period. So let's say you make one copy of yourself goes on vacation, another copy of yourself works 80 hours a week, and a third copy of yourself visits all your family and friends because you're ignoring them. And then they all get back together. So which memory is the true one? The one when Tuesday you were on a beach, or Tuesday you were with family helping them fix the garage, or Tuesday when you were at work about to pass out eating another energy bar and Monster Energy drink, right? That's the where reintegrating your memories becomes a problem, and that's where sanity is in the game, which is another thing you have to explain to your players. Yeah, you don't have to worry about gunshots; you might just go insane. Um Wayne says, "Do we need to get into those topics in game where the point is more to have an adventure fun?" N- Okay, the straight answer is no. You could literally play this as special ops, run and gun. You're just special operators running around the world, solar system, gunning down enemies. You do not have to get into those things. As a matter of fact, I would suggest not getting to into all of it on day one. The problem, and this is just me, just my personal opinion. The problem with not getting into those things is that you're not playing the rest of the game. So, uh, it would be like eliminating half of the classes you can pick from 5th edition. Like, you can't play druids, we got rid of monks, you can't play paladins, no warlocks, right? It's not that you can't play the game, it's that part of the choices in the game you're missing out on. So, no, you don't need to get into all the psychological mess, but some of the adventures that you're going to go on may involve those things. For example, you might be hunting after a big like a corporate entity, right? Like some big corporate person is trying to doing a terrible experiment. Easy, simple, right? Easy peasy. Player characters go in, but then you find out that the corporate person, you think you murdered a corporate person, but of course they've got backup somewhere. They send their brain somewhere else. They go, "We're not done yet." And you're, oh, okay, so well, they can transfer their brain. Well, I guess being assassins is pretty difficult, isn't it? Right. So that's a problem. Now you got to hunt down this corporate entity that left. Well, that corporate entity has is part of a faction, maybe, or they have allies somewhere who let them know. And guess what? Maybe the corporate person just switches into a different body. So now how do you find them when they are a different body, a different gender? Maybe they fork their brain to allow them to engage in their further processes even further. Like, hey, I'm gonna fork myself into 5 different people so I can go after the PCs and integrate myself into their life and become different people. And that was actually a point of contention in the television show Altered Carbon, where our main character meets a number of different people and come to find out his long lost sister. Spoiler alert for a show that's already canceled and been over for a couple of years, quite a number of years. um, his own sister was following him by re-sleeving into different individuals that were in the background of his life. A lawyer here, a person in the background there, a homeless person, another different woman that he encountered, maybe another dude that's on a special ops group, those kind of things. And so you do end up bumping up against those issues. And I'm not pointing, listen, I'm not criticizing, but I am saying like the difficulty, why I love this game is also the difficulty of why it's difficult for people to get people involved in it. there's a running gun. There's something really cool to do. Listen, you got to have high explosives and laser weapons and all that kind of stuff and body armor and all that. Yeah, you got to have that. Um, but you do lose a little when you don't get into some of the like psychological manipulations and the body horror and things like that. Yeah. Mod says, and if you leave copies running around, copies of yourself, game masters have a tendency of making them the villains. Oh, hells yes. For some fairly good reasons. You only have one reputation. How are you going to share? Exactly. Somebody else is playing with your face? Yep. It's billed as a game of transhuman conspiracy and horror. By default, it's more focused on the Delta Green crowd who want a scary story with difficult moral questions, but it doesn't have to be. Right, and Wayne follows up in 5e. I'd eliminate most of the subclasses. See, and that's a thing, right? When you have, how do I explain it? When you have too many options, it can be a little bit daunting. Which is, I think, one of the issues that Eclipse Phase began with. Yeah, I get it. Lot says, I remember hearing about one Eclipse Phase game which involved solving a murder. Turns out the person was murdered and their head thrown in a lake to distract them while something they owned was robbed. That's funny. While the robots were searching for the missing head to reinstate the person in a new body, they weren't watching their properties for burglaries. That's great. That's funny. Wayne says, I meant more the hypersexual aspects. The rest is fine. Yeah. You don't have to. No, you do not have to engage in all the hypersexual stuff because, some people act like 14-year-old boys when it comes to that kind of thing. Um, but I will admit, like, you like Dungeons and Dragons, it has everything. It doesn't mean you need to use it or introduce it all at one time. Very few Dungeons and Dragons modules include a dragon and a vampire lord and a lich and mind flayers and demon lords and at the end of the game, right? And cultists and a warlock and a. It's not all of it. You just use what you need. Ooh, forgot about this hacking. We still have hacking in the game, right? Authentication and encryption methods, mesh, which is the internet, with hacking and such. You have AIs and what's called a muse. A muse is every player character in Eclipse Phase runs around with a digital assistant in their head. That digital assistant can be framed any way you want it, from as simple as just data printed in front of your overlay in your eyeball, just information. Like, it doesn't have a personality. It's a heads up display and just puts information in front of you. Midway, it would be like our phones, or maybe secondary, it could be like our phones, except they're in our heads. You need an appointment. You need to use an app. You need to contact someone. You need to look up a video. You want to look at a TikTok. It's all in your head, and it just flashes in front of your eye. You can move up even further where it has a slightly discorporated personality. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, whatever you wish there, Dugan, Ariana, right? I will do that for you. I have also contacted so and so, like an actual butler, body person, valet, um, a literal assistant. And then it could even move up to a real personality. Maybe it's a grandfather, maybe it's a sibling, maybe your digital muse is a portion of your own personality doing things for you in your head while you go around adventuring and such, which again doubles the number of active participants in the game. So if you have 4 agents, they each have their own personality in their head. Technically, that's like at least 8 independently acting agents in the game, which can complicate things. One way to do it is to have the player character to your left act as your own muse if you want to, if you don't want to make it confusing, or you just let the players act as their own muse if you want them to. Their PDA, their personal digital assistant in their head, or they can become literal NPCs. So, yeah. That's another complication. And that's just basic technology. And then you have to remember all the other stuff, how to use cortical stacks, using uploaded backups, death and backup insurance, uploading and ego bridges and things, and how to, the idea of popping a stack. Uh, that's just part and parcel of the setting and how to use it. And then remember, I think something that we often overlook is, especially as game masters, is that emails, those go to my brain secretary. Hells yes. I think one of the things that we tend to lose sight of in high tech gaming is that if it's available to the players, it's available to the enemies. All of it's available. Yes, I know player characters are special, but it's available to the enemies too. So if the player characters are starting to do some funky things, like let's hold on to this antimatter bomb that I'm going to carry on my back because I want to use it. The bad guys have the same access to those things too. Uh, O5 says muses, because it turns out everyone telling their secrets to Google or Amazon's assistant AIs was a bad idea. So everybody gets their own. Everybody gets their own running in their brain chips. Yep, your muse is knows more about you than yourself for the most part. So anyway, I wanted to just basically incorporate a bunch of these games together. Um, Transhuman, Posthuman. If you ever see that in a tabletop RPG game, that's essentially what this is about. It's about immortality and um, technological singularity and AIs and all of that combined together. So let's go here. Let's remove, let's take this out and stop sharing. Boop, 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 boop. So again, before we get out of here, the Expanse. I like the age system. You kind of have to get used to the 2d6 plus 1d6 system and the stunt points, but I would very much suggest looking at the Expanse. Altered Carbon, not my favorite, but if you really love the television show, I would suggest going after this. Whoa, sorry. I would say that the Altered Carbon game is probably for you, especially if that's your only way to introduce your players to something and say, "Hey, watch this." But I would say watch the Expanse. It's much better quality. Um, uh, O5 Ozmat says, and the stakes can rise as you realize the questions of what are the things that scare immortals. Yeah, what scares an immortal? Ugh. Okay. Eclipse Phase Second Edition. Again, the first edition is available for free digital versions on their website. It's located below the video. Eclipse Phase, probably one of the best, most elaborate, highly supported post-human, transhuman role-playing game systems out there. The community that is loyal to it is so brilliant. It just a lot of the big picture questions, so definitely that. And let's go old school. Let's go old school. With Transhuman Space from GURPS, Steve Jackson Games. Um, definitely got to definitely got to get into something like this. GURPS system is a love or hate thing, but I got to admit, just the books themselves. Don't use any of the game statistics. Will really open your mind. GURPS has always had quality in their books and stuff. So Z's. Eclipse Phase, the second RPG that ever caught my eye. Wow, really? Wow, that's a rarity. Oh, let me take this out of here. So again, these are the games that I suggest. If you take a look around the interwebs and look for um, this niche in the sci-fi system, find other games out there, support those as well. These games really, even without playing the games, they bring up so many questions about society and rethinking what we hold dear today. The things that we murder each other over today fade away like dust in the wind uh, in these settings, just because when you eliminate gender and gender roles and create a sexual fluidity that's as simple as just plugging yourself into a digital mainframe or reloading yourself up into a brain, when uh, Racism is literally a checkbox on a, hey, I want to look or sound or be like this. As a matter of fact, you can even download other people's experiences and live those as well. So yeah, crazy. Uh, Mod says a nice thing about Eclipse Phase is how you can just give the books to your players without legal issues. If you're getting a group together, that Creative Commons license is really nice. Yes, it is Creative Commons non-commercial. It's available right now. You can go over there and download the games or any part of it for free. They have a very active um, blogosphere, so you can find out information about other. If you have questions about things from other people out there, yes, Zamar says, thank role playing public radio for my love for various RPG systems. I found them during my Lovecraft phase. Yes, they have an old but ongoing RPPR, the podcast. They had an ongoing Eclipse phase adventure that I got into, and I was like, oh, that's what this is about. That really pulled me in. So yeah, the Expanse, Altered Carbon, Eclipse Phase, second edition. This is their printed book. It's not available yet for free, but all things aren't free in life. So, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for being part. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on. We're going to get back into our regular things. Probably what we'll start next week is I'm going to do, with so many people leaving and arguing and pretty much just downright damn near hating Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons right now, everyone's flocking to other systems, or at least side systems related to Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought we would go do a little delve back into the past and do a little OSR versus modern D&D. Like, why the OSR? Why are people flocking toward the OSR? Why does it exist? What are the unintended consequences today in gaming that started in the OSR and were changed and had unintended consequences leading up to today? So we'll do that for next week, and then of course we do. Please, if you come here this long, please like, share, subscribe, spread the word. I read all the comments, so leave a comment. Be nice. You know, you are the creatives and kind folks in the community, so be kind to each other and to me. I appreciate it, guys. Have a great one and have a great weekend. We are out. Bye.